TJ Dillashaw is not a good guy. In fact, I have no problem saying that he's a pretty bad person, and I might even argue that he might be a little bit of a sociopath. In this video, I have prepared a couple of examples throughout TJ's career to help back up my claim that this guy really is a snake in the grass.
There's a little snake in the grass right there. Hey, little boy.
First and foremost, TJ has had a reputation for years now of being not just a bad training partner, but even being a dangerous one. In a YouTube video uploaded February of 2018, TJ can be seen sparring K1 superstar Takeru Segawa. TJ and Takeru's sparring seem to be standard affair, however, check out what TJ does once the bell rings and the round is over. In my opinion, this is a sucker punch of the most egregious order. Like, not only did TJ throw the punch way after the bell rang, but Takeru's hands were completely down by his sides. To me, this is a scumbag moment from TJ, but who knows, this might have been a one-off incident, right? Maybe TJ was having a bad day and he got a little bit carried away. Nope. TJ literally has a history of being an overly aggressive training partner. Take, for example, how TJ quite literally ended the fighting career of promising up-and-comer Chris Holdsworth, who at the time was his teammate at Team Alpha Male. In an episode of the JRE in 2017, Uriah Faber and Cody Garbrandt brought to light TJ's repeated behavior of cheap-shotting his training partners and genuinely trying to cause them damage. They claim that TJ would throw knees in boxing sparring and even throw elbows during regular jiu-jitsu practice.
TJ, so he was coming in, and TJ was never the best teammate. He would like try to hurt people. He's a very competitive guy, and he has a temper, and like
try to hurt people how?
Cheap shotting. Cheap shotting.
Cheap shot your house.
We always used to
end the bell, boxing, he knee ya.
He knee ya. I'd be like, no knees. He's like, I just need him to the bottom. I'm like, yeah, we're boxing sparring.
He knees you to the body in boxing sparring?
Unprompted, Cody then claims that TJ forced Chris Holdsworth into retirement because TJ kneed him in the back of the head during practice.
Knees, you know what I mean? That's why Chris is out, you know what I mean? Need him in the back of the head for
that's
concussions.
it. Yeah.
I mean,
Chris Holdsworth? That's where the injury came from?
I don't want to, Chris doesn't want us really talking about that.
Well, but that's the truth. We're talking about cheap shot, and that's
what was it again?
I mean, he doesn't care if we talk about it. I mean, I guess
it's the truth.
What happened? How did it go?
Chris
is fucking him up. Everybody. I mean, Chris was an animal, and I guess Chris choked him out, and TJ got out and fucking kneed him in the back of the head
when he's down on the mat.
When he was down on the mat.
In a grappling match, or were they sparring MMA?
It was sparring, but
knees to the back of the head. That's what
literally killed Chris's career.
Yeah.
It should be noted that this episode was recorded during the very height of the beef between TJ versus Team Alpha Male, so emotions and tempers were definitely running high, but honestly, I totally believe Uriah and Cody when they say all this. In response to this, TJ appeared on the MMA Hour and denied that he had anything to do with Chris's retirement. And in response to TJ's denial, Chris Holdsworth himself then made his own MMA Hour appearance where he ripped into TJ, calling him a liar as well as levying some serious accusations of TJ being a steroid cheat.
And yeah, I remember that instance that's out in the public is, yeah, it's definitely true. I shot in on TJ, and I was on all fours. He was sprawled out, and he kneed me on top of the head. And that was before the Ultimate Fighter. And I remember I was kind of jarred up, and everyone was watching, and I took like 30 seconds off, but I kept going. I kept going through the rounds, and I finished practice, but after that practice, I was concussed, and that was my first concussion, and it just kind of, kept happening from there. And there was another instance leading up to the Chico fight, when he was getting ready for Brow, and then it comes to clear that I hear he's on some special supplements and stuff, and I just lost respect for the guy.
And when you say special supplements, you mean steroids?
You're a smart guy, Ariel. You guys can put two and two together, but
yeah, all of this is pretty wild. I mean, the fact that Chris confirms that TJ is responsible for indefinitely sidelining him from competition by being an asshole training partner is huge in and of itself. Like, this is why I say that TJ might genuinely be a little bit of a sociopath, because he seemingly enjoys hurting his teammates, and not only does he not show remorse for it, but he even lies about the things that he's done. And the way that Chris describes the situation in which TJ kneed him just seems so evil. Like, Chris was literally a downed opponent abdomen, and TJ intentionally threw a very illegal knee to an illegal area of the head. So it's not like TJ threw the knee in hopes of winning the sparring round or whatever, he threw it with the sole purpose of hurting Chris. And obviously, Chris outright stating that TJ was known at Team Alpha Male for being a steroid user is also huge. And seeing as how TJ's career has panned out ever since, I think that we can all probably agree that Chris was telling the truth here. But just put a pin in that for now, because we're going to talk about that later. TJ's former Team Alpha Male training partner, Adam Corrigan, also had some interesting things to say about him in 2017, claiming that TJ would not only try to cause harm to the other pro fighters, but he would also try and hurt the new and inexperienced students as well. So yeah, obviously all of this does not paint TJ in a very good light, and even though the claims of TJ being a dangerous partner from the Team Alpha Male guys like Uriah, Cody, and Chris could just be seen as slander because they're butthurt that TJ left their squad or whatever, I actually do believe them. I mean, especially seeing as there's documented proof of TJ throwing an egregious cheap shot at Takeru Segawa, I really do believe that TJ probably had a bad habit of being a bad training partner while he was at Team Alpha Male. I'd also like to point out that no one has ever made a statement defending TJ as a training partner to say that he wasn't as bad as these guys are claiming, not even anonymously. Also, I've seen people online in comment sections wondering why Team Alpha Male was okay with TJ hurting his training partners while he was a part of the team, but when he left, that's when all of these ugly accusations started to come out. I think a lot of people noticed this and formed the opinion that Team Alpha Male made up these claims because they were bitter that TJ broke up with them. But on that note, I don't think that Team Alpha Male was okay with TJ hurting his sparring partners, but they simply tolerated it because even though he was clearly an asshole, at least he was a loyal asshole, and for all of his faults and shortcomings as a teammate, TJ was one of the boys. But much like when any other messy breakup occurs in life and when emotions become charged, that's when the dirty laundry and ugly truths start to be revealed. And in the case of TJ, it's not like his actions at Team Alpha Male only became an issue once he turned his back on them, but I'm sure it was easier for Team Alpha Male to tolerate TJ's shitty behavior when they believed that TJ was loyal to them and thus they were loyal to him. However, once they felt that their loyalty was betrayed and when feelings became hurt, it does make sense to me that the Team Alpha Male guys would be so eager to expose TJ's dirty training habits. Anyways, remember when Chris Holdsworth blatantly accused TJ of PED usage? Well, he wouldn't be the only one of TJ's former teammates to confidently declare that TJ was using PEDs. 2 weeks after Chris Holdsworth's accusations, Cody Garbrandt added to the pile during the UFC 217 pre-fight press conference where he was set to fight none other than TJ himself.
One of the accusations made at TJ was the fact that he'd taken some special supplements.
Oh yeah, the guy's on everything.
Yeah.
He's on everything.
TJ?
Yeah, I'm on everything. Come and they test me every day, so come on, I'm on everything.
Funny, you're the one that showed everyone how to do it on Team Alpha Male.
So yeah, I'm the one that's now bringing it in. Yeah.
Look at him. He has nothing to say.
Rose.
Also, the fact that Cody went on to say that TJ showed the Team Alpha Male guys how to do steroids was very interesting. Because on one hand, that's a pretty compelling thing for Cody to say that also provides first-hand perspective into TJ's PED use. On the other hand, does this not also implicate Cody and honestly the entire Team Alpha Male gym as a whole as being PED users? Oh yeah, I know you do steroids because you literally taught me, Chad Mendez, Clay Guida, Joseph Benavidez, and everyone else at the gym how to do it. Checkmate, bitch. Look, self-dry snitching aside, this is one of those cases in MMA where the smoke accurately foreshadows the fire. Because just over 2 years later, on January 18th, 2019, just 1 day before losing to Henry Cejudo for the flyweight title, TJ was found to have EPO in his system by USADA. Things went from bad to worse for TJ when USADA later revealed that TJ had EPO in his system from a prior drug test that took place on December 28th, 2018. And I'm sure that you guys know where I'm going with this, but cheating is bad. And I know that a lot of you guys are going to say that every UFC fighter is taking PEDs of some sort. Who knows? Maybe that's true. But the thing is, we live in a world where fighters like Kamaru Usman, Francis Ngannou, and Paulo Costa have never failed drug tests, whereas TJ has failed too. Admittedly, I don't know anything about steroids or PEDs, but if Kamaru Usman has successfully evaded testing positive this entire time since 2015, and TJ has tested positive twice within a 30-day period, then I feel like that might indicate excessive PED use. I mean, come on, to this day, people still call Kamaru the CEO of EPO even though he's never failed a drug test. So if Kamaru is the CEO of EPO, then what does that make TJ? Fucking EPO Jesus? Alright, last thing that I want to bring up for this video is TJ's fight with Aljamain Sterling, and I already know that some people in the comments are going to say that TJ did nothing wrong here, but I definitely disagree. Obviously, this is the fight where TJ walked into the octagon with a severe shoulder injury that he chose to hide from not just the fans, but the UFC as well. And in spite of the fact that TJ noticeably chose to skip out on the open workout during fight week, fans were unaware of TJ being so physically compromised heading into one of the biggest fights of his life. Because just seconds into the very first round of the fight, TJ's shoulder clearly popped out of its socket due to a takedown, and it was apparent that he was quite literally fighting with one arm. TJ got manhandled in the first round, and in between rounds, TJ's corner desperately tried to pop his shoulder back in, but without much luck. And yeah, as we all know by now, TJ, who was literally a one-armed man that night, was easily finished by Aljo in the second round. Obviously, the fight was an extreme disappointment for all UFC fans because at the time, most of us thought that TJ's shoulder injury was a freak accident that originated within the cage. But immediately after the fight, in TJ's post-fight interview, he admits that the shoulder injury was an ongoing issue throughout his training camp, even going as far to say that his shoulder had popped out around 20 times in the lead up to the fight. He follows this up by saying that he even told referee Mark Goddard just before the fight that it's very likely that his shoulder would pop out of place during the fight and asked him not to stop the fight if it does happen. Like, what? As you can probably guess, I personally think that this was a real scumbag move out of TJ. The biggest reason being is that TJ knowingly and intentionally withheld the severity of a major injury from the public. And you might be asking, why does this matter? It's TJ's own private life and he doesn't need to disclose injuries to fans. Which is true, but I want you to consider how many people bet money on TJ to win this fight, thinking that TJ would be walking into the octagon with at least adequate health. There are a lot of people out there who lost out on a lot of money betting on TJ who likely would not have done it if they knew that TJ was walking into the fight with one arm. It just doesn't seem right to me that TJ let fans believe that his body was adequately conditioned for a fight when in reality his shoulder was constantly popping out of its socket all throughout his training camp. Not only that, and this is just a hypothetical scenario, but who's to say that TJ didn't bet on himself to lose that fight knowing he was walking into that fight with a bad shoulder? Mind you, the UFC banned fighters placing bets on fights literally 5 days before TJ and Aljo actually fought. Coincidence? Who knows? Nevertheless, TJ himself admitted that his shoulder started popping out several weeks prior to the fight, so what was actually stopping TJ from placing a bet against himself? Because in this totally hypothetical scenario, as long as TJ was able to step into the octagon on fight night, he either somehow beat Aljo with one arm and becomes champion again, or he loses and scores a pretty massive payday because of the bet that he placed against himself. Again, this is a hypothetical scenario, but do you see the moral issue that I'm trying to paint here? And regardless of whether or not TJ actually made a bet against himself, or if he had one of his friends or family members place a bet on his behalf, the guy still lied to a lot of people who bet their hard-earned money on him to win the fight, thinking he was in fight-ready condition, which he absolutely was not. Anyways, you might be saying fighters go into fights with injuries all the time. Aljo was probably injured as well, and trust me, I totally get that, but I think that maybe we can agree that this was an extreme circumstance that doesn't quite compare to the usual circumstance of fighters walking into fights with bumps and bruises. Like, in all my years of watching the UFC, I have never heard of a case similar to this, where a fighter's shoulder gets dislocated around 20 times throughout the fight camp and they still choose to step into the octagon. Like, TJ's shoulder popped out the moment the fight hit the ground. He was clearly not in fight-ready condition and absolutely not in good enough condition to take on Aljamain Sterling at that time. I've also seen people say that TJ didn't disclose the injury to either the UFC or fans because he wanted to take advantage of the UFC's health insurance policy that states that the UFC will pay for fighters' surgeries and medical treatment only if fighters get injured during an actual fight, meaning that in TJ's case, he would be able to get the UFC to pay for his shoulder surgery on his behalf. But the thing is, I don't know if this theory actually holds up, seeing as TJ himself immediately admitted in the post-fight interview that this was an ongoing injury that originated weeks ago during his training camp. So if TJ was actually trying to get the UFC to pay for his shoulder surgery, maybe it wouldn't be the best idea to immediately confess that the injury happened weeks before he ever stepped into the octagon. Nah, personally, I really believe that TJ really thought that he could beat Aljo with just one arm. And I say that because TJ has repeatedly said within interviews and and podcasts that he genuinely thought that Aljo was that easy of a matchup that he'd be able to do it literally single-handedly. And assuming that this is true, that TJ sincerely believed he was going to beat Aljo with one arm, I think that TJ was straight up delusional going into that fight. Because as good of a fighter as TJ was in his prime, you know, before getting banned for PEDs for 2 years, heading into the Aljo fight in October 2022, even if TJ had two perfectly functional arms, it still would have been a tall task to come out with the win. The fact that TJ himself claims that he thought he could do it with just one arm is genuinely baffling to me. And look, obviously, I'm doing a whole lot of speculation about this topic, seeing as no one truly knows what was going on through TJ's head during this time, but at least in my perspective, no matter which way you slice it, TJ kept his shoulder injury hidden from the UFC and fans in pursuit of his own delusions of glory or for his own financial gain. Who knows, it could very well be both. And ironically, in the present day, TJ has been vocal about his frustrations with this same shoulder injury, stating that it's been impossible to get it to recover fully, and because of this, it's forced him to retire early from fighting. And although I kind of feel bad for TJ that he can't even raise his arm up in the air anymore, I can't help but feel like this was an easily avoidable outcome that he brought upon himself through his own pride and his own ego. Alright, anyways, that's all that I wanted to talk about for this video. In my opinion, TJ is one of the best examples of a great fighter who's also kind of a terrible person. I mean, even if we were to simply look at his repeated behavior of intentionally cheap-shotting and injuring his sparring partners, I would say that yeah, this guy probably has some anger issues for sure. But then we also have TJ's 2 failed drug tests, along with the fact that he conned the fans heading into his fight against Aljo. I really don't have any issue in saying that TJ genuinely is a snake in the grass. Like, this guy's ego and sense of competitiveness is just so out of control that we've seen it compel him to cheat, lie, and deceive in order to get to the top. And in exchange for his brief time in the sun, TJ not only had to sacrifice his reputation with peers and fans alike, he also had to sacrifice one of his arms. Honestly, as this Reddit comment says, TJ is a shining example of the long-term effects from sacrificing it all to get to the top. TJ really did climb to some of the tallest heights of the sport, and I would love to say he took the noble route in getting there, but he just simply did not. From abusing his sparring partners to getting flagged for PEDs twice, TJ has stepped on other fighters' heads and cut corners to get to where he is now. And I get that MMA is a very selfish sport, but I think that there's a very fine line between being selfish and being vindictive, like how I feel TJ has shown to be. And frankly, I really hope that all of those 5 UFC World Championship belts that TJ has in his home are worth it to him in the end. I hope that in his retirement, they give him a sense of peace and accomplishment for doing what so few others have been able to do. But at the end of the day, all of those belts and accolades will never replace the honor that TJ has lost throughout his career. And I really hope for TJ's sake that in his retirement years, he can finally learn to put aside his petty ego and his insatiable desire for glory and just enjoy being a father to his children. But for some sad reason, I can't shake the idea that instead of finding a sense of peace and stability in fatherhood, TJ might instead end up growing old and bitter thinking at how his UFC career was stolen from him. Anyways, that is the video for today. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.